So not too long ago, I went out to a restaurant and I was feeling particularly hungry this particular day. So I had myself not one, but two curry chicken rotis. For those of you who aren't familiar with what a curry chicken roti is, it's basically like they'll take curry chicken and potato, and sometimes they'll throw some other ingredients in there too, like I think there was chickpeas in this particular roti and some gravy. And they have this baked breaded wrap that they wrap it up in, and that's what makes up a curry chicken roti. So I had a couple of these a couple of weeks ago. They tasted good. I didn't notice anything unusual or off about them. Well, fast forward to about 4 or 5 hours later, and I ended up basically I had dinner about 4 or 5 hours after having these curry chicken rotis. And throughout the afternoon, I noticed I was burping a lot. My stomach was feeling kind of uncomfortable, but not anything out of the ordinary. I didn't feel particularly bad or anything. So, about 4 or 5 hours after I had these curry chicken rotis, and right after I had dinner, I ended up in the bathroom with diarrhea. And I know it wasn't the dinner that I had that particular day, because I figure if my dinner was gonna make me sick, it probably wouldn't have happened that quickly. It happened immediately after dinner. So I figured it was the curry chicken rotis, because I had dinner at my parents' place. I know that my parents are very diligent in the way they handle food, the way they store food, and the way they cook food. So I know it wasn't them. So I ended up having my first diarrhea probably somewhere around 5:30 that evening. And then I ended up back in the bathroom several more times throughout the night. It got to a point where I got almost no sleep I got pretty much no sleep that night, or very little sleep. And it got to a point where it seemed like I spent almost 2 hours just in the bathroom nonstop. It became so unbearable with an upset stomach and diarrhea that at 3:30 in the morning, I finally asked my sister to drive me to the hospital, because I think I have food poisoning. Went to the hospital. They did some tests on me, they took some blood work and all that. And they suspected that I had food poisoning, even though my blood work came back fine. Now, before I went to the hospital, I had taken some Imodium. And I guess the Imodium did work, because my last diarrhea was at 4:30 in the morning. So I went through about 11 hours of having an upset stomach and diarrhea, but no word of a lie, those 11 hours were a living hell. Those were the most miserable 11 hours I've ever experienced in my life. So I went to the hospital around 3:30. I got discharged around 8 o'clock that same morning, because I'd stopped having diarrhea and my blood work came back fine. In other words, otherwise was doing fine by this time. So they discharged me from the hospital. Now, this particular food place, I'm never going to go back to this food place again. I'm not going to name the food place I ate at, because in all fairness to them, it might not be anything that they did wrong. I mean, yes, it is possible that maybe they weren't handling the food properly, like maybe their hands weren't clean enough, maybe they didn't store this food at the proper temperature, maybe they might not have cooked it properly. I realize all those factors can contribute to food poisoning, but also, in all fairness to them, it might not be their fault. They might have ended up with some contaminated food, and they might not have been aware that the food was contaminated. Like when I was eating the food, it tasted just fine to me. It tasted like it had been properly cooked and everything. I didn't notice anything different or off tasting about it. So basically, the moral of the story is, when it comes to your food, like if you're going to a restaurant or whatever, whenever possible, I know it's not always possible because a lot of the times your food is prepared behind closed doors. But whenever it is possible, watch the people that are preparing your food. Like, for example, make sure that they either wash their hands or that they're wearing gloves when they're preparing your food. And also make sure that if it's perishable foods they're preparing for you, that you see them take it out of the fridge or the freezer. And watch them as they're cooking it. And also, when you get it yourself, take note of whether or not you believe it's been properly cooked. Like, I know that these aren't always, it's not always possible. Your food might be prepared behind closed doors, and you might not always be aware of what they're doing in the kitchen. But like, for example, if you see them doing something unsanitary or something that could threaten the food contaminate the food that they're handling, say something about it. Like, I remember a while back, I went to a pizza restaurant, ordered a slice of pizza, and Buddy was proceeding to get my pizza without wearing gloves or washing his hands first. So I said something to him about it. Like, I said to him, shouldn't you be washing your hands or wearing gloves? And I guess he seemed like he might have been a bit irritated by it, but I didn't really care. Yeah, if you see people doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing, say something about it. If they make a big stink about it or they refuse to change their ways, just turn around and walk out and go to another restaurant. It's really not worth risking getting food poisoning. Yeah, you don't want food poisoning. It's just a living hell. So just make sure you're handling your food properly. Make sure, whenever possible, that others that are handling your food are handling it properly. And also, don't be afraid to call the health department as well, too. And when you go into a restaurant, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, some jurisdictions, they Right here in Canada, they have that red card, yellow card, green card system, where if they get a green card, that means that they passed. If they get a yellow card, then they've got a conditional pass. It might have listed on it the problems that were found in their restaurant or in their food establishment. And if there's a red card, then that means that that particular business has been closed for particular violations. Don't be afraid to call your local health department and report restaurants that are not following proper food safety procedures. I mean, that kind of thing can't put your life in danger. So just be careful out there. Thanks for listening.